Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen of Wootton and Dry Sanford community, thanks. I'm going to do a poem about I'm going to start with a poem about the trains. Excuse me, is anyone sitting? No? Do you mind if I go ahead? The rest of the hustle and bustle get on, the doors shut and the pushing and shoving goes on. Baggage and carriers, suitcases and holdalls, all being swung and crammed into crevices, above and below the heads of the bodies negotiating for seats. Most reserved, few not. Businessmen loosen their ties whilst wriggling out of their pinstripe straitjackets. Mothers do frantic head counts of their oblivious and excitable offspring. The train pulls away from the station platform, upon which are the ones who missed it. Sobbing mothers of potential college freshers, train spotters and the guard. Have your tickets ready, please, ladies and gents. Women scrabble around in handbags whilst male posteriors rise slightly from seats and hands rummage around in back and front pockets in order to prove validity for travel. Mummy, can I show him the tickets? Just let me find them first, lovey, then you can. Then the train derailed at a level crossing and they all died. So yeah, that's the one. You always get some mixed response. It's this next one is about. I thought it was quite good to do second. It's very self-revelatory, and it's So let's go for this. It's called The One-to-One. I am the mole that likes daylight. The worm with an intolerance for soil. I am the duck that refuses to quack when coaxed by children with bread at the shore. I am unsure about direction, which way is balance, whereabouts stability lives, and so on. I enjoy fishing for the extinct, hoping through binoculars to spot a dodo one day. Life is too short to give up hope. Life is too long to listen to the likes of Boris Johnson. I am not an anti-catapultist, but I struggle to cope with exploitation of the vulnerable and poor. Plus, I think that capitalists can be very dangerous in the wrong hands. I try to remind myself that nobody is a wanker. They are just misunderstood. I masturbate occasionally, but I am not a wanker. Most of the time. Occasionally, I'm misunderstood. I always try my best to try my best. I don't read enough, and I'm not very good at listening or concentrating. I'm short-tempered, often lacking in empathy, badly organised, forgetful, and without fail, reliably late for most appointments. I don't always look after myself or take my pills on time, and I drink and smoke very heavily, regularly. But I do really want this job. When will you let me know whether I've been successful, please? We're doing it. Struggling on the mic. Don't need to be ever so effective. I must say, it's lovely to be doing poems in such a place. The poets always. But no, it makes a real change from the arenas. I'm going to do a poem now. In fact, I'm going to sing it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have a musical. Have the orchestra with me today. I'm going to do it a cappella. And it's a poem. It's a comparison between the life of a pig and that of a human on minimum wage, and it's also what I think makes a really good party. I think especially in the summer really brings people together. So it's called Spit Roast. Percival, spit. Former full trotter, now upward pointer, rotating, salivating, creator, horizontal pink pole dancer. Apple sauce enhancer. Oh, Percy's pig, his succulent suckling, I could never bore of him. Bore. All right. All over tender, if that piggy was a bank, he'd even be an interest-free penny lender. Honey-brushed crackling was his wife called Jacqueline, and if Jackie ran a pub, would she be a scratching vendor? Encourage the playing of Jenga in place of backgammon. Does she holiday on health farms? Is she a fan of the mud bath before relaxing in the sauna, jacuzzi and swim? Does Percy miss her when she's away and hit the lamb's run and beefy touching? Oh, do they both miss the old days when they were in Wiltshire, roaming free range, carefree, happy as pigs in shit, rather than working like humans behind the bar for £6.31 an hour, but instead ending up in your sandwich. There we go. Okay, from pigs to pigeons. We are a bit of an issue with the pigeons, ladies and gentlemen. You're walking peacefully along the towpath, and then all of a sudden this haunting flapping out of a hedge. Not keen. Or walking down the high street and they just miss, especially when you're tall. And I just see pigeons generally as a sort of a haunt, a haunt for me. I don't know whether any of you have seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Yes. But anyway, this is based on a true story, and these two poems, they follow on one from the other. I must say, I live on a narrowboat with my wife, which is long and narrow, which is funny because I'm long and narrow, and the cat. But this first story is based when I was at the pinnacle of my academic prowess at catering college in Torquay. In 1997, this is what happened. And like I say, this poem, and then leads on to the next one. It's called "Do Not Feed the Pigeons." Back from a sandwich on the sea wall, I dropped in at the bakery for dessert. Some sweetness to counteract the lingering, savoury flavour of the salt sea air, as one does. Onward ambling uphill to campus, distracted by the stale status of my Chelsea bun, I reluctantly tore strips from its sugary coil, and whilst popping one particular piece of the current weighty pastry into my mouth, I came across a pigeon. Inflated chest, a supervisor's strut, hopping like a child on the scotch, on and off the pavement curb, between me, the row of parked cars, and the stream of oncoming traffic. So hopefully you can visualise this. There are the cars. And there he is. Disappointed by each mouthful of the cake, a charitable gesture ensued, yet a gesture with an underlying, rather murderous motive, which triggered the tearing and throwing of a small piece of bun towards the bird. that was bobbing about between the bumpers of the parked cars. Sadly, due to the not-so-fresh nature of the cake, the bun bounced, and post the pigeons pounce upon the Chelsea pensioner piece, from behind came the wheels of a downhill-headed van that rolled straight over the downhill-facing pigeon. I couldn't look, but only gasp in shock at what I imagined to be a sight of splayed feathers and bun. Back to class, to share of my despair, was where the response was not, there, to spare me the guilt of guts spilt, but the feelings were of upset and disbelief at the malice that caused me to engage in such a thoughtless act, especially amongst the vegans. Okay, straight on to the next one. Save it up, ladies and gentlemen, save it up. This is called Pigeon Comeuppance. It hops around. So, of course, I'm from Torquay, but this is, at the time, I was working in a cafe in Oxford. So it sort of jumps from past to then, present. Questions at the end. Here we are. I wouldn't want to patronise you, but, you know, I find a lot of poetry so hard. Okay, right, here we go. Pigeon Comeuppance. Eventually, back on board the boat to an angry cat and a cold, dead fire. But better that than an angry fire and vice versa. The river's a ruffled cravat, a moderately annoyed pensioner listening to the shipping forecast, which still makes little sense. Words of customers wash overhead after another day at the fucking cafe. Froth spat from up off the tops of coffee cups. In cranial canyons it lies like tidal scum. Foam treasured like a chest, washed up, a handbag for the seagulls to dance around, tapping, slapping on the hard, dark sands of Torquay. Then, at the cafe, the sudden sound of a dishevelled feathered pigeon flies up from under the fence by the bins whilst I dispose of last night's bottles. Still stunned, I stand frozen. Uncradling of my unsettled state, the pigeon coos. Oh, no, I haven't got that right. Oh, that's a bit better, yeah, but with a bit more aggression. I escaped. Oh, this is the pigeon, by the way. And you're still here, trapped like a coffee bean tumbling towards the grind. Yes, true, I reply. And probably not tomorrow, nor certainly today, but pest control will drive by soon and shoot you down like clay. So remember that, you foul-beaked waddle of vermin. Don't forget to clock back in, wage slave, taunted the pigeon. So we've really got conflict of characters going on here. Mrs. Jones, my English teacher, she was Welsh, yeah. But she'd probably not be impressed with this either, actually. But anyway, we'll carry on. Good luck in the next race, you feathered bag of lard, I retorted. On return to duty, I took chalk to blackboard, and although not in my mind, in black and white, the pigeon became somewhat special in pie. Pigeon pie, with chips, gravy, and peas. Bird's eye. This is for all those on the front line, ladies and gentlemen. This one's for the doctors, surgeons and nurses, the mopper-uppers of fronts of trains and the carriers of hearses, the porters, carers, knuckle-crushed hand-holders, the stern matrons, bed-makers, pan-emptiers, flower-water changers, gynecologists, blind drawers, ball checkers, buttock parters, drip connectors, blood takers, second checkers, epidural injectors, baby removers, gas-giving laughter assisters, bed bathers, oncologists, and all the other ologists, Orthopaedics and paediatricians, the stitchers and warriors in emergency admissions. This one's for all those in the colorectal units, colostomy, urostomy and ileostomy bag fitters, pacemaker connectors, liver exchangers, and all the sandwich makers in the League of Friends. This one is for all of them, apart from those who decide how the money is spent. So yeah, I mentioned my my carer, my wife. She's a teacher. Any questions? She's very good. In a moment, I'm going to do a poem about her. But before that, the mother-in-law. Tapestry. Her mother was due to be discharged from hospital today, but selfishly, I'm glad they didn't allow her release, as it meant that I had her daughter for another night. Just her and me and meatballs, rolling around and reclined on a red wine sea, where we listened and sniggered at the lyrics of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. In a moment when the sand felt smooth between our toes and less like shrapnel on this cancer battleground. On this cool autumn evening, as the tide takes a turn for the better, there is still her mother's wound to heal, stitches to be removed, and mental scars yet to be revealed. But then, that is all part of life's rich bear, isn't it? All right, and this one's about her indoors. This is called a baggage label for the whole population. Yeah, my wife's a celeriac. Well, not quite. She isn't actually a celeriac. But she has an issue with wheat, gluten, dairy, and me. But I beat her. I've got a lot more problems than that. So anyway, here we go. A baggage label for the whole population. I sent you a postcard stating that I'd been far and wide, but you knew instinctively that this travel log lived only in my mind, as you had seen how rare it was that I take in the view of outside from my bubble, with malfunctioning membrane barely semi-permeable, letting little out and nobody in. But I still need you not to resign, my mechanic, but to help fit some wheels onto this carriage. I believe we can share this journey and meet halfway, across the motorway. Look, I have a central reservation for us. Upon this small stretch of pasture, let's lay out the picnic. Here, I've brought a piece of pork pie for you. Worry not, my dear. The pastry is totally gluten-free. The sandwich bread has no wheat in it either, and the cheese is goats. Oh, we're going to get some whoops. Yeah, thank you!
You're rather good.
Oh. Hey, hello. Hi, darling. No, not coming home tonight, sorry. This is a short story with a message, so it's written for kids. Once upon a time, they, in brackets, Gary, Barry, and Debbie, and Kelly, and Shelley, and Peter, and Geeta, Rita, Roger, Derek, Merrick, and Roy, Joy, Larry, Harry, Terry, Michael, Fanny, Dick, Titty, Sarah, Sasha, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Blitzen, and Reebok all went out to play. It all got a bit out of hand. Then they stopped and took a step back, then continued to play, but nicely, like nice children. Then they sipped some ginger beer, but there weren't enough bottles to go round, so they shared remembering to wipe the germs off the tops of the bottles with their cuffs before sipping. Then they all lived happily ever after, except for Kelly, because she was dirty. Okay, well, I think we're sort of nearly there. I'm going to do a poem, and to finish. In fact, this will be my penultimate, ladies and gentlemen. This is about a guy who I used to live with. This is called "The Grass Won't Necessarily Be Greener." Autumn 2011. My mate Chris is emigrating to Spain in a day or so. The levels of sun are higher there than here. The grass will be scorched. He will still get depressed. And this is the last one. I have a book. In fact, just one. I had two, but I have. There we go. I have 50% sales already, ladies and gentlemen, before even coming on stage. It's £15. I'm going to tell you that because I think that's expensive. It is great, but it's a lot of money for a book. It's a first edition hardback. It is one of the last 10 of a print run of 600 that they did, but also I got a taxi here from Radley and it was expensive. So usually they're £2, but okay, so 15. So just to save you the embarrassment, don't come up and say, "Sorry, how much did you say it was again?" And then go, I feel embarrassed. Don't like that. We're all English here, British, or not necessarily. Be nice if not. Okay. So, goodness. Okay. Danish. Good. Anyone else from anywhere other than Wootton? Yeah. Wales. Some Welsh in. Got a late arrival. Don't worry, sir. Nobody's noticed. What's the reason? You're late. Right. It's just nice. It's nice that you made it in time for the best poem you've ever heard. Okay. This is about rowing. Ladies and gentlemen, have any of you ever been to Oxford? Yeah, give us a cheer. You've been to Oxford. Okay, well, the first year that we bought the boat, we took it up. We spent our first winter on the canal in Oxford, and then we moved down onto the Isis stretch before Reading. In fact, we're in Pangbourne at the moment. So this is about rowers. I don't know whether there are any rowers in this evening. If there are, it's dedicated to you. If not, it's anyway. I hope you enjoy it. This is my last poem, and you've been an audience. This is only a poem. Okay. It's called "We Live Aboard, They Don't." Once gently woken by the scrapes of their oars on our hull, the wife and I like to take to the deck to watch the early risers row, viewing their competitive, streamlined craft from the back of our fatter, slower, longer one. We sit peacefully beneath the bellows of Mr. Megaphone Dictator, MP to be, post-pubescent, self-doubtless God on a mountain bike, whilst we breakfast. Moored midway along the river's straightest stretch, at a point where the athletes are reaching their optimum speed, is a place where the wife and I like to see as our own finishing line. Our homemade point of victory being a length of cheese wire that stretches across the width of the river at precisely the rower's neck height. Tied taut around a tree on the far bank and to the stern of our floating home on t'other, we sit with bated breath, watching and waiting like unlicensed night fishermen. Masticating a mouthful of kippers, the wife licks her oily lips. I slurp my Earl Grey, and smiling we spectate as the first rower reaches our finishing line, and the wire cleanly severs through each consecutive neck like freshly cut Cornish yarn. Mind you don't sting your mouths on the nettles, I yell, as we watch them watch the roll of their own horse-teethed heads topple off their torsos and onto the lycra-clad laps of the one behind. Bit of an angry poem, isn't it? And as the pointless plastic coffin swerves off into the bank, the wife and I guffaw to each other. That'll teach you, we snigger, perhaps to face forwards in future. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Keep coming back and supporting this night. Cheers, thank you. For the genuinely unplanned encore, I say that's ever so kind of you, but if this one goes down like a sack of... then... Okay, so we finish one about swans, ladies and gentlemen, and this is... there's a heavy metal section in the middle of this. I shall attempt to do a tiny little bit of folk, although I've been sort of a competition on my hands. There's been some lovely folk tonight. It's about the beauty of swans and the dangers of smoking. And it's called An Ode, an Apology to the Swan. This morning, the river's rough ripplings means that the swans are surfing past the boat and the bottoms of banks where the mallards rest with their reversible heads, beaks embedded in feathers. It's quite rhythmic, quite nice. The first verse, unfortunately, the second verse it isn't as strong, but hopefully you won't notice. It did got past the edit. But oh, swan, 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 my swanny, swanny, swan, swan, son of another swan, I'd imagine I could never eat one. Not just 'cause it's illegal, I'd just much rather feed you from the crumbs, with the crumbs from my breadboard. Last night I saw you soar and ski for many meters like Eddie the Eagle. No, I didn't say seagull, because I know you're more refined than those scavenging seaside swines. Oh, I love it when you dine, stalking the shoals that dart below the surface, your brontosaurus neck nearly reaching riverbed and your quill-clad behind waggling as you dine, dancing in the air like at the Folie Bergère. Oh yeah, sometimes you like brill, other times bream, although occasionally trout or whatever's about. You're not fussy. That's one of the things I love about you, Swanee. 'Cause you're a propellerless, porcelain, marshmallow-wet, passengerless pedalo, a destinationless leisure craft, playing chicken in the path of the bow of my barge. Yeah, lacks a bit of brill, but he never wears a trilby. He's got a coat of quills, so a biro he'll never be. That was the heavy metal bit. But one time, Swanee, when we were all moored up, the kettle had whistled and I had got my cup and I was sat smoking on the back of the boat, and you looked at me so sternly. Because I had tapped off the ash onto your beak accidentally. Obviously, I'm sorry, Swanee. Thank you very much.